Love-hate week one for the pass catchers. And listen, a pretty important one is playing tonight as the NFL season debuts in Kansas City. We got to hear from Amon-Ra St. Brown and how excited he is to go against that Kansas City defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the best offenses in this league, so to be able to keep up with them might be, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that means our defense is letting up a lot of points, but we're scoring a lot of points. So, I mean, that's obviously not what we want as a team, but if it comes to that, man, we got to, hopefully we get the ball last and we can score last, but that's a great offense to try to keep up with.
Surprise! Love-hate week one of the pass catchers is led by Mr. Ride or Die, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Shocker.
Yeah, well, obviously, of course. Like, I mean, you know, look, it was kind of a no-brainer. I think it was minus 20,000 on Jay's line as to whether or not Amon-Ra St. Brown would make my love list. But the fact of the matter is look, he gets a ton of targets, right? He had 14 full games last year, and 13 of them he had at least 8 targets. So we know he's going to get a massive target share. Hawkinson is no longer there. Jameson Williams is suspended. We know they want to run the ball to try to keep 15 on the sidelines. Doesn't mean they're going to be able to. And ultimately, Patrick Mahomes only needs 2 plays to get into the end zone. So we'll see. You heard Amon-Ra talk about it right there. They're going to have to throw to keep up a little bit. So it's a good matchup with the Chiefs. In addition to massive volume from Amon-Ra St. Brown and his own talent, Chiefs allowed the most receptions to the slot last year, the second highest catch rate allowed to the slot as well. And so as you see it there on your screen, you know, better, more than the Titans or the Ravens or the Vikings or the Niners, the Chiefs gave up the most receptions to the slot. When you play Kansas City, you have to throw quite a bit. My expectation is Amon-Ra St. Brown sees the ball early and often tonight. I'm his wide receiver 4. He's my fantasy ride or die. I'll be talking about him tonight on Football Night in America on NBC and Peacock just before the game. Of course, I'm a company man. Amon-Ra, he is your sun god. Bask in the glow of Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, very good, Matthew. Very well sold. Firstly,
thank you.
I loved Amon-Ra just trying to kind of do circles and not throw the Detroit defense under the bus as he was rejecting a shootout.
Yes.
Very well done, artfully done by Amon-Ra.
That might be the best route he runs all day.
Exactly right. And then secondly, the one concern with Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, would be just, in a way it's a concern, in a way it's a strength, is the lack of a secondary receiving option to take some of the pressure off of him. But I don't think that really is going to matter that much against Kansas City. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, they're fine as cornerbacks. They're not Sauce Gardner or Patrick Surtain. So I think that he'll be okay on that front. And then I think even bigger than the cornerback matchup, Chris Jones not being there tonight is massive. Chris Jones is the best player on that defense by margin. They only won the Super Bowl because Chris Jones just went off in the AFC title game, sacked Joe Burrow on 3rd and 8 in that last minute of that game. He is an absolute monster, and I'm not sure how they're really going to get pressure against Jared Goff. And Jared Goff, when he's not under pressure, all of a sudden becomes like a fringe MVP candidate. So I think Amon-Ra, he's very well set up for success.
That's the key, Jay. With Goff, you want him playing, you know, off platform, throwing off platform, out of structure. You want pressure from the A gap, that interior pressure, and that's what Chris Jones brings. So if there was ever a time for Jared Goff to have a monster game against this Kansas City defense, of course, it's without Chris Jones. That brings us to our next pass catcher on this list, Cris Olave going against the Titans. Jay, we just wrapped up how Jamal Williams was a hate because of that vaunted Titans rush defense, but you brought up specifically their secondary is very vulnerable, and this is the runner-up to the Offensive Rookie of the Year, gets to see them week one.
Yeah, Matthews misspelled Michael Thomas as Cris Olave, but I think they're both going to have good games. I think back to second half of last year, the Titans secondary just got lit up repeatedly, and it's a curse in a way that their rushing defense is so good because it forces teams to throw.
Which they want to do.
I think back to what Philadelphia did, A.J. Brown's return to the Titans where they were just doing whatever they wanted through the air. So I think that Olave, in a game where they should be throwing, you know, at home, as 3-point favorites. We think Cris Olave is going to have a monster year, and this matchup is as good as it gets.
Yeah, without a doubt. And Barry, you've highlighted all summer Derek Carr's deep throwing fits with Cris Olave's vertical skill set.
It really does, and it matches up nicely here because as Jay was talking about how Tennessee's secondary struggled last year, they really struggled in the deep ball. In fact, no team in the NFL gave up more deep touchdown passes and only one team have more yards on deep passes. Again, these are passes 15 or yards more downfield than the Tennessee Titans. That's the way you attack Tennessee. It's hard to run against them. It is much easier to throw. That's how the Saints are going to move the ball on Sunday, is through the air. So you'll see some Olave. You'll see a lot of Olave. He comes in at wide receiver 8 for me. I'm at wide receiver 1 this week. Maybe we see Michael Thomas and Jay can do a victory lap on us on Monday as well. You'll see some Rashid Shaheed. I know you like Rashid Shaheed, Connor. But expectations here are that Olave has a big game against Tennessee.
All right, after Olave, Tyler Lockett taking on the Rams, who are dealing with all kinds of different problems right now. We always talk about how underrated Tyler Lockett is. Barry, also Jackson Smith-Njigba, the 20th overall pick in the NFL draft. He's back at practice, we know that, but he's been dealing with coming off the broken wrist, where more might be put on the plate for Lockett and DK Metcalf in the early going of this season.
Yeah, we'll see whether JSN is active for this game, but it's great to see him back at practice, because there was concern when the wrist injury happened that he would miss the first game or he might miss a couple games. So the fact that he practiced on a Wednesday is great, and certainly if he's not active in week 1, you feel like he will be in week 2. Either way, 3 of the top 4 cornerbacks for the Los Angeles Rams are either rookies or second-year players. We know Jalen Ramsey left the team in the offseason. Lockett last year against, I think, a better version of this secondary last year, averaged over 21 fantasy points in 2 games against the Rams. He scored in both games against them. So, look, our friends over at Pro Football Focus said the Rams have the worst secondary in the NFL. Who am I to argue with Pro Football Focus? Tyler Lockett is my wide receiver 19. Geno Smith may or may not make the love list coming up a little bit later in the show. That's what we call a tease or foreshadowing, those of us who are broadcast professionals. But what I would tell you here, my friends, is that Tyler Lockett's going to have a big game against the Rams. He's a top 20 play for me.
Yeah, this Rams defense, I mean, we talked about it before, but try play a game with your friends and guess the Rams defensive players outside of Aaron Donald. I mean, they've got guys like Russ Yeast at safety, Kobe Durant at cornerback. Kelly Witherspoon's on this team now, so yeah, I think that they are going to be a mess. I don't really understand why Seattle are only 5.5-point favorites in this one at home. I think that is going to get bigger and trend towards a touchdown potentially, but yeah, Tyler Lockett should certainly eat.
All right, our last one here before some others receiving votes. Darren Waller against the Cowboys. We got to see in just one drive, Jay, that Darren Waller might be the Giants' passing offense. We saw Daniel Jones lock onto him. We know how excited they were to acquire him for the 3rd-round selection and get a bigger-bodied, middle-of-the-field pass catcher in Brian Daboll's offense. He gets the Cowboys week 1.
Yeah, and just with this Kelsey knee and with Mark Andrews and what he's going through, like I wouldn't be shocked at all if Darren Waller ends up a top 2 tight end.
Kittle's banged up too.
Kittle's banged up. It's starting to trend towards Waller and Hawkinson as the 2 guys. And this Cowboys defense is monstrous, but sneaky thing is that their linebackers, after they moved Micah Parsons to basically an exclusive edge rusher last season, the linebacking core, I don't think it's a weakness necessarily because the overall defense is so strong, but I mean, Leighton Vander Esch, who's had a really kind of strange career, kind of resurfaced a little bit last year, but I mean, he's kind of the guy there now. So I think if there is a place to target, it might be the middle of the field. And you know that Brian Daboll, whatever the weakness is, that he's going to pinpoint it.
And some of the younger guys they were expecting to help out got hurt this summer for the middle of that Dallas defense. So, Barry, this just feels like not only a talent play, we know how great Darren Waller is, and we love Brian Daboll's offense, but maybe a great volume play as well.
Yeah, I think he's going to get a ton of volume. We saw that in the preseason. The expectation is he leads this team in targets and receptions. And I think Jay brings up a great point in terms of where you want to attack the Dallas Cowboys defense. Last year, they were tied for the 6th most touchdowns allowed to the slot, right? They gave up a ton, and so obviously that's where that's where Daniel Jones likes to throw quite a bit. It's where Darren Waller is the most comfortable. 60% of his routes last season came from the slot. It's where we've seen him line up in the preseason as well. So Darren Waller is my tight end for this week, and I think there's an argument to be made because, like, we don't know yet if Kelsey's going to play tonight, and if he is, maybe he has limited snaps. Mark Andrews returned to practice Wednesday, which is great, but maybe he's less than 100%. George Kittle, we still don't know his status for Sunday, so even if he plays, maybe he's less than 100%. Like, other than Hawkinson, there's not a lot of there's question marks around all the elite tight ends, so I think there's definitely a scenario, a very real scenario, that come Tuesday morning and we're looking back on week 1, the number 1 tight end in fantasy this week is Darren Waller.
A couple others receiving votes. Cortland Sutton against that Raiders defense. Jahan Dotson against what's left of the Arizona Cardinals. Sky Moore tonight, of course, against the Lions. Jaden Reed against the Bears. We talked about Tyler Higbee a little bit against the Seahawks and how much he's going to mean to that Rams passing attack. Gerald Everett against the Dolphins, who have had a fair share of injuries as well, especially in their secondary. And Barry, there he is. It's time to unleash Luke Musgrave against the Bears.
So let's talk about Musgrave and Jaden Reed here real quickly, just because Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs did not practice on Wednesday. Watson's injury sounds not great, and that it might be a multiple week injury here. I don't know. It just doesn't sound great. So I think there's a chance that both Watson and Doubs don't play in this game. If you listen to what Coach LaFleur said in his press conference, it doesn't, it's just like, let's take it week to week, not day to day, right? So I'm concerned about that, which I do think means that it could be Jaden Reed and Luke Musgrave. I think both guys get a lot of targets this weekend as well. We've talked about Sky Moore throughout the week. He played all the snaps in the first team in the preseason with Patrick Mahomes. So I like Sky Moore there as well. Jahan Dotson, look, Terry McLaurin returned to practice yesterday, which is great, but he might be somewhat limited. Dotson's been actually out-targeted McLaurin over the final 5 weeks of last year. And then, we talked about, as I mentioned, Higbee. One thing I'll say about Courtland Sutton is that Jerry Jeudy also returned to practice. We don't know his availability, but it was a great sign that Jerry Jeudy did practice, at least in a limited fashion, on Wednesday. But if Jeudy does miss, it's worth noting that in the last 2 years in which Jerry Jeudy has missed, Courtland Sutton averages over 15 fantasy points per game. And there's been a connection between Russell Wilson and Courtland Sutton all preseason. So I like Sutton even if Jeudy plays, but if Jeudy is out on Sunday, all thanks to Courtland Sutton.
So Jahan Dotson gets some votes for the love list, but we kick off the hate list with his teammate, of course, and Terry McLaurin against the Cardinals. And Jay, we know the kind of competitor Terry McLaurin is. He was like that all the way back to playing special teams for Ohio State, and he's really been the guy for that Washington franchise. Do you have some fear of somebody trying to play through something, especially when it's turf toe?
Yeah, and I just don't think he's really going to need to play every snap in this game. The Commanders, would you believe it, Matthew? Sam Howell is a touchdown favorite in week 1. Sam Howell and the Washington Commanders. And you can't really doubt it, because I'm not sure the Cardinals.
Please refer to him by his proper name, Jay. Please refer to him by his proper name.
Future top 23 fantasy quarterback in 2023, Sam Howell. Future Hall of Famer, as you would say, Matthew.
There you go. That's his official name. Connor, you and I and Connor and the rest of the Happy Hour crew are in a guillotine league draft, and Connor snaked Sam Howell from me.
One pick
before last round, just before we went on air. Super annoyed with Connor Rogers.
Barry, I almost want to start him week 1. I won't over Joe Burrow, but I really almost want to, just for fun.
Yeah.
Listen, I get it, because he's gonna have a really good game this week. He makes other receiving votes when we get to the love list on the quarterback, hint there. But yeah, to your point, Jay, the fact of the matter is that the Commanders are favored. Arizona's having to travel on the road. We expect Josh Dobbs to start, but whether it's Josh Dobbs or the rookie Clayton Tune, the fact is we don't think the Cardinals are going to be that good this year. And the Commanders, home opener, new ownership, it's sold out. The crowd's actually going to be into it. Dan Snyder is gone. So I'm hopeful for here. And so even though McLaurin practiced on a limited basis yesterday with a turf toe, how many snaps does he play? If they get up big, do they pull him because they want him to take it easy? I'm nervous about McLaurin. Normally he's a no-brainer starter, but he comes in at wide receiver 27 for me this week. Just a low-end flex because of the concerns about can he go full speed with a turf toe, and is there a chance that they limit his snaps either because of injury concerns or because of the score?
I do think with McLaurin, it is going a little bit too far where he's falling in a lot of drafts where people just don't want to draft guys who are injured because they're this close to the season, they're this excited about their teams, and they just don't want to wait a week until someone's full go. Kelsey's dropping too much, I think. McLaurin's another guy as well who maybe he doesn't have a great matchup this week, but he's falling too late in drafts.
Barry, the next one caught my eye, and that's Gabe Davis against the Jets. I'm kind of fascinated to see how the Jets handle the Bills' offense. If a lot of people are assuming this is Sauce Gardner against Stephon Diggs, and number one, the Jets don't move their corners. They play sides. And number two, you have to wonder, do the Jets just allocate the extra attention to Diggs and see Sauce against Gabe Davis, which we have seen a lot in the past. So Gabe Davis makes the hate list as well as he'll play Monday Night Football in New Jersey against the Jets.
Right. Regardless of whether he sees Sauce, friend of the show, Sauce Gardner, by the way, or a variety of looks, the fact of the matter is that whoever you roll out there against the Jets struggle. The Jets last year allowed the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. They allowed the fewest receptions and fewest yards to wide receivers last season. In 2 games against the Jets last year, Gabe Davis combined for 5 for 64. Like, you wouldn't be thrilled with 5 for 64, and that's what he did combined. There's always a chance he catches a touchdown. There's always a chance he catches a long one here. But I'm nervous on Monday Night Football in a week in which there aren't that many injuries and there's no one on a bye. He's just outside my top 40. Gabe Davis is kind of more of a boomer bust guy. It's a tough matchup here. The other pass catcher that makes my hate list, again, it just goes to show you, like, I'm objective here because you know how much I love, in general, Chig Okonkwo. But I am not getting jiggy with it in week number 1. Saints allowed the fewest receptions and yards to tight end last year, right? They were the best against the tight end. In fact, only one tight end last year scored double-digit fantasy points against the Saints last season. I don't think Chig Okonkwo is going to do that, especially because the fact is that we expect Treylon Burks to play in this game. Treylon Burks returned to practice yesterday in a limited fashion. So if suddenly that gets worse and we get news that he's not going to play, okay, maybe. But the fact of the matter is Treylon Burks practiced yesterday in limited fashion. It's a tough matchup with the Saints. We expect Hopkins to get a lot of target share. And Mike Vrabel this offseason said, hey, Chig Okonkwo's blocking needs to improve. We don't know, has it improved enough to get him on the field to play enough snaps to make him a viable tight end? He's my tight end 17 this week. He's very touchdown dependent, a low-end tight end too. I would much prefer somebody like Luke Musgrave, or if Kelsey is out tonight, I'd prefer to start Noah Gray than Chig Okonkwo. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.